What's good, YouTube? Sensational Sinceres here, and I'm back with another Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video. We're here for July 10th, 2020's Vendor Reset. So let's get right into this and see what we got good for this week. Okay, so for our first gear items, you want to head over to Camp Hudson. Here, the weapons vendor has a Paratrooper SVD with a gear score of 267. It has 157% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Adept, Proficient, and Discipline. Okay, so for our next gear items, you want to head over to the base of operations. Here, the weapons vendor has a black market AK-47 with a gear score of 271. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is Destructive, Unforgiving, and Ferocious. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the gear vendor, and we got an operator pack here with the talent Inventive on it. It has a gear score of 264. The armor is 1,136. Its roll for electronics 1,230. And the attributes it has is Stability and Disrupt Resistance. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the advanced weaponry vendor, and here we got an enhanced ACRE with a gear score of 277. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is Vicious, Prepared, and Sustain. Also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 4.50% reload speed, 4% crit hit damage, and 10.50% rate of fire. Also here we got a loud vent brake with 18% crit hit damage, 2% accuracy, and 4.50% optimal range. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special equipment vendor, and here we got a Liberator with a gear score of 277. It has 23% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is Dominant, Ferocious, and Focused. Also here we got a Historian with a gear score of 275. It has 163% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Trained, Fierce, and Historian Repeats. Also here we got a G36C with a gear score of 272. It has 23% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is Commanding, Vicious, and Focused. Also here we got a double barrel sawed-off shotgun for your sidearm. I'm just mentioning this weapon because it has two of the talents that I like to run on mine, Sustain and Determine. And then it has Ferocious on the bottom, but I would roll it for Predatory. So when you get the smack, when you're doing some PvP, then you activate all three of these talents. And then of course Predatory instead of Ferocious. Also here we got a first wave M1A with a gear score of 269. It has 154% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Adept, Fierce, and Sustain. Also here we got a Spec Ops armor with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 279. The armor is 1,916. Its roll for stamina 1,242. And the attributes it has is Health on Kill, Skill Haste, and Increased Kill XP. Also here we got a Spec Ops pack with the talent Inventive on there. It has a gear score of 266. The armor is 1,163. Its roll for firearms 1,189. And the attributes it has is Skill Power and Ammo Capacity. Also here we got a Prototype Performance mod with 3.50% turret damage. Also here we got a Mega Rifle Suppressor with 17% headshot damage, 4.50% optimal range, and 3% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a Surplus SVD blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a Stamina Mask blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got an Electronics Vest blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a High Velocity Magazine blueprint with a power level 34. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Cavern. Here the gear vendor has a Prototype Firearms mod with 263 firearms and 1% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Kerman Station. Here the weapons vendor has a SRS A1 with a gear score of 262. It has 145% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Ferocious, Trained, and Prepared. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Camp Clinton. Here the special equipment vendor has a Historian with a gear score of 265. It has 153% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Commanding, Deadly, and Historian Repeats. Also here we got a First Wave Vector 45 ACP with a gear score of 263. It has 19.50% crit hit chance, and the talents it has is Capable, Ferocious, and Vicious. Also here we got a Military P416 with a gear score of 276. It has 22% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is Adept, Dominant, and Destructive. Also here we got a SOCOM M1A with a gear score of 273. It has 155% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Fierce, Dominant, and Discipline. Also here we got a Spec Ops mask with the talent Refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 852. Its roll for electronics 1,270. And the attributes it has is Skill Power and Blind Depth Resistance. Also here we got a Spec Ops mask with the talent Refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 852. Its roll for electronics 1,270. And the attributes it has is Skill Power and Blind Depth Resistance. Also here we got a tactical vest with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 278. The armor is 1,975. His roll for electronics 1,204. And the attributes this has is health, enemy armor damage, and ammo capacity. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4.50% ballistic shield damage resilience. Also here we got extended magazine with 117% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, and 3% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Clinton. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got some stamina knee pads blueprint with a gear score of 256. And also here we got a high velocity magazine blueprint with a power level 34. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Dante's Run. Here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 2% pulse crit hit damage. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Madison's Stand. Here the gear vendor has a tactical vest with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 264. The armor is 1,762. It's rolled for stamina 1,160, and the attributes it has is health on kill, health, and increased kill XP. Also here we got a prototype electronics mod with 183 electronics and 3% damage to elites. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the last call. Here the weapons vendor has a small grip red with 19% crit hit damage, 2% stability, and 4.50% reload speed. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the grindhouse. Here the weapons vendor has a pro red dot sight with 17% crit hit damage, 2% accuracy, and 2.50% stability. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the crypt. Here the weapons vendor has a lightweight M4 with a gear score of 263. It has 21% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is responsive, prepared, and sustain. For me, I don't run responsive and prepared on the same weapon, but I thought I'd mention it in case somebody does. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to West 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype firearms mod with 264 firearms and 3% skill haste. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to West 34th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone has a Paratrooper SVD with a gear score of 281. It has 159% headshot damage, and the talents it has is adept, competent, and disciplined. And also here we got a loud vent break with 18% crit hit damage, 2.50% stability, and 4.50% optimal range. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to West 39th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has an SASG-12 with a gear score of 260. It has 313% stagger, and the talents it has is predatory, unforgiving, and fierce. And also here we got a timer suppressor with 7.50% crit hit chance, 2.50% stability, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, you want to head to the West 42nd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical UMP-45 with a gear score of 265. It has 21.50% crit hit chance, and the talents it has is unforgiving, dominant, and ambusher. And also here we got a prototype electronics mod with 264 electronics and 3% skill haste. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 53rd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a police UMP-45 with a gear score of 263. It has 22% crit hit chance, and the talents this one has is brutal, accurate, and ambusher. And also here we got a large suppressor FDE with 19% crit hit damage, 2.50% stability, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 61st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has an extended magazine with 118.50% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, and 5.20% rate of fire. For our next gear items, we want to head over to East 58th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Spec Ops mask with the talent refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 930. It's rolled for stamina 1,154. And the attributes this has is skill power and blind death resistance. Also here we got a gunslinger vest with the talent reckless on there. It has a gear score of 269. The armor is 1,931. It's rolled for firearms 1,127. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage, all resistance, and ammo capacity. And also here we got a Spec Ops pack with the talent specialized on there. It has a gear score of 270. The armor is 1,214. It's rolled for firearms 1,175. And the attributes this has is health and disrupt resistance. For our next gear items, we're here to the Park Ave checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone weapons vendor has a G36C with a gear score of 274. It has 22% enemy armor damage, and the talents this has is unforgiving, dominant, and focused. Also here we got a Marine Super 90 with a gear score of 278. It has 304.50% stagger, and the talents this has is trained, vicious, and fierce. And also here we got a classic M1A with a gear score of 264. It has 165% headshot damage. And the talents this has is disciplined, unforgiving, and balanced. For our next gear items, we're here to the East 53rd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a custom M44 with a gear score of 261. It has 154% headshot damage. And the talents this has is vicious, unforgiving, and swift. Also here we got a tactical vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 278. The armor is 1,913. It's roll for stamina 1,266. And the attributes it has is health on kill, skill haste, and increased kill XP. And also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 4% crit hit damage, 3% crit hit chance, and 11.20% rate of fire. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 46th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical vest with the talent Vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 283. The armor is 1,997. It's roll for firearms 1,258. And the attributes this has is all resistance, exotic damage resilience, and increased kill XP. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 40th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype stamina mod with 267 stamina and 2,901 skill power. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 34th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical pack with the talent Specialized on there. It has a gear score of 269. The armor is 1,307. It's roll for electronics 1,128. And the attributes this has is skill power and disrupt resistance. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4% sticky bomb damage. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype firearms mod with 252 firearms and 3,018 skill power. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to DZ2 safe room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a tactical vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 262. The armor is 1,733. It's roll for firearms 1,136. And the attributes this has is health, all resistance, and ammo capacity. And also here we got an operator pack with the talent Specialized on there. It has a gear score of 265. The armor is 1,174. It's roll for stamina 1,153. And the attributes this has is health and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, you'll head over to DZ3 safe room. Here the Dark Zone weapons vendor has a custom M870 MCS with a gear score of 260. It has 309% stagger. And the talent this has is trained, competent, and vicious. Also here we got a classic M44 carbine with a gear score of 273. It has 161% headshot damage. And the talent this has is commanding, destructive, and prepared. And also here we got an infantry MG5 with a gear score of 280. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover. And the talent this has is meticulous, vicious, and unforgiving. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to DZ4 safe room. Here the Dark Zone gear mod vendor has a prototype electronics mod with 258 electronics and 1% crit hit chance. And then also here we got a prototype performance mod with 7% support station range. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ8 safe room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a tactical vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 273. The armor is 1,827. It's roll for a stamina 1,202. And the attributes this has is health, exotic damage resilience, and increased kill XP. And also here we got a tactical pack with the talent Inventive on there. It has a gear score of 261. The armor is 1,149. It's roll for firearms 1,138. And the attributes this has is stability and ammo capacity. Alright everybody, that's it for our Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video for July 10th, 2020's Vendor Reset. I hope everybody that tuned into it found them something that they needed. Smash out that sub and like button if you hadn't. I appreciate that support, y'all, and I will see y'all with the next one. Take care. Peace.